They say money can't buy happiness. I never believed that, until the day I stood at her grave, holding a check for $10 million she'd refused to cash. My name is Catherine Winters. I built a pharmaceutical empire, but I destroyed the one person who ever truly loved me. Before we dive into this story, if you appreciate raw, untold tales about life's hardest lessons, hit that like button and subscribe. Trust me, you'll want to stay until the end for this one. I'm 58 years old. I own 3 homes, 2 jets, and have more money than I could spend in 5 lifetimes. But every Sunday for the past 3 years, I've driven myself, no driver, no entourage, to a modest cemetery on the outskirts of the city to visit the grave of Rosa Martinez. She was my housekeeper for 19 years, and she was the only person who ever truly knew me. Let me take you back to where this all began. I grew up in rural Montana, the kind of poor that makes you angry. My father drank himself to death before I turned 12. My mother cleaned houses for wealthy families, coming home with her hands cracked and bleeding, smelling like other people's bleach and furniture polish. I remember watching her count coins on our kitchen table, deciding between electricity and groceries. I made myself a promise that night. I would never ever be poor again, and I kept that promise at any cost. I clawed my way to a pharmacy scholarship through sheer rage and determination. That's where I met Daniel, my first husband. He came from old Connecticut money, the kind of family that had portraits of ancestors in their hallways. He thought I was charming, a rough diamond he could polish. He funded my first research lab, thinking it was a cute hobby for his wife. He had no idea I was building an empire. 25 years ago, when my company was just starting to take off, I hired Rosa. She was 32, recently widowed, raising her 10-year-old daughter, Lucia, alone. I needed someone to manage my household because I was working 80, sometimes 90 hours a week. I interviewed 15 people. They all told me what they thought I wanted to hear. Rosa told me the truth. She looked around my cold, expensive house and said, "You have a beautiful home, Ms. Winters, but it doesn't feel like anyone lives here." I hired her on the spot. Rosa became the heartbeat of my house. She didn't just clean and cook. She made my house feel alive. I'd come home at midnight after brutal board meetings, and she'd have left a plate of food warming in the oven with a note that said, "Eat, you're no good to anyone if you collapse." Her daughter Lucia would do homework at my kitchen table, and sometimes I'd help her with math problems between conference calls. Those were the moments I felt almost human. My first fortune came from drug patents, medications for chronic conditions that people would need for life. That's the secret to pharmaceutical wealth, recurring revenue. My company went public, and I made my first $100 million before I turned 40. That's also when my marriage to Daniel fell apart. He wanted half of everything in the divorce. Can you imagine? He'd given me $200,000 15 years earlier, and now he wanted $400 million. I fought him viciously, hired the most ruthless lawyers in the country, and Rosa testified for me. She told the court that Daniel had mocked my work, called it a little hobby, never believed in me. I won. But something in me calcified during that fight. I emerged harder, colder, more ruthless. Over the next 15 years, Rosa became more than my employee. She became my only real friend. She was the only person who could tell me when I was being unreasonable or cruel. After my mother's funeral, which my own siblings didn't bother attending, Rosa sat with me all night while I cried. She never said a word, just held my hand. I paid for Lucia's college education. But even then, I couldn't just give. I made Rosa sign papers saying it was a loan. "I don't do charity," I told her. That was my first mistake. Lucia became a social worker after college, working with underprivileged children in community centers. I thought it was a complete waste of her education. She could have gone into business, I told Rosa one evening, made something of herself. Rosa looked at me with those steady brown eyes and said, "Not everyone measures success in dollars, Catherine. My daughter is making something of herself. She's making a difference in people's lives. It was the first time I heard disappointment in her voice when she spoke to me. Then came the deal that changed everything. My company developed a breakthrough pain medication. During internal testing, our scientists discovered that roughly 15% of users developed severe addiction issues. They recommended 2 more years of testing. But I saw the numbers. We were looking at potential billion-dollar annual revenue. The benefits outweighed the risks, I told myself. Every medication has side effects. I pushed it through the approval process. I had the lawyers, the lobbyists, the connections, and Rosa overheard everything. She confronted me one night in my study. It was late, almost 11. I was reviewing the marketing strategy for the drug launch. "Catherine," she said, and I heard something in her voice I'd never heard before. Fear. "This will hurt people. Poor people who can't afford rehabilitation. People like my family used to be. People like you used to be." I dismissed her. "You don't understand business, Rosa. You don't understand the complexity of risk assessment and public health policy. The benefits outweigh the risks." She stood there for a long moment, and then she said something I'll never forget. "I understand people, Catherine. Something you've forgotten how to do." I told her to stay out of my business matters. She said she couldn't stay silent. She threatened to go to the press with what she knew, and I fired her. Just like that, after 19 years, I wrote her a severance check for $200,000. I actually thought I was being generous. Rosa looked at that check, and then she tore it in half. "You can't pay your way out of guilt, Catherine," she said. Those were the last words Rosa Martinez ever spoke to me. The medication launched 6 months later and became my company's biggest success. I made billions, plural. Forbes put me on the cover. I won industry awards. I gave speeches at conferences about innovation and breakthrough thinking. I was untouchable. 2 years later, the addiction crisis hit the news. Thousands of people were struggling with dependency on my drug. Hundreds were dead. Lucia's community center was flooded with addicts desperate for help. The lawsuits started piling up. I hired an army of lawyers and fought every single case. We won most of them through settlements with non-disclosure agreements. Publicly, I maintained that we'd followed every protocol, that we couldn't have predicted this outcome. Privately, I stopped sleeping. I started seeing Rosa's face everywhere, in windows, in crowds, in my dreams. I tried to reach out to her. I wrote her a letter trying to explain, trying to justify. It came back marked, "Return to sender." I tried calling. She'd changed her number. I sent gifts. They came back unopened. For the first time in my life, my money couldn't open a door I needed opened. Then, 3 years ago, my private investigator called me with news I wasn't prepared for. Rosa had advanced breast cancer, stage 4. She was working 2 jobs to pay for medical bills, not her own, but her granddaughter's. Lucia's daughter had been born with a severe heart condition, requiring expensive ongoing medication. The irony wasn't lost on me. Rosa was killing herself to pay for the kind of drugs my company made billions from. I tried everything. I sent anonymous payments to the hospital. Rosa discovered the source and refused them. I tried to visit her in the hospital. She wouldn't see me. I wrote her a letter offering $10 million, full medical care for the rest of her life, a trust fund for her great-granddaughter. Lucia brought me Rosa's response in person. She stood in my office, the daughter I'd once helped with math homework, and she looked at me with Rosa's eyes. "My mother says your money is stained with blood. We don't want it." But I couldn't accept that. I showed up at the hospice facility one evening. I bribed a nurse to tell me which room. Rosa was barely conscious, her body ravaged by the disease, and the treatments she could barely afford. But when I walked in, her eyes opened. She recognized me. I fell to my knees beside her bed. I begged. I apologized. I cried, in a way I hadn't cried since I was that little girl in Montana, watching my mother count coins. "Please," I whispered. "Please let me help. Please forgive me." Rosa lifted her hand. It took all her strength and touched my face. "I forgive you, Catherine," she whispered. Her voice was barely audible. "But you have to forgive yourself, and you have to make it right." Those were the last words she ever said to me. She died 3 days later. I tried to pay for her funeral. Lucia refused every offer. I attended anyway. I sat in the back of a crowded community church and watched hundreds of people file past her casket. People whose lives she'd touched, children she'd helped, families she'd fed. I realized then that Rosa Martinez had died a wealthy woman. She was rich in the only currency that actually matters. And I was bankrupt. That $10 million check, I had it framed. It hangs in my office. That uncashed check is worth more to me than all the money in my accounts because it reminds me every single day what money can't buy. It can't buy back time. It can't buy back trust. It can't buy back love. I started making changes, real changes. I became a whistleblower against my own industry. I testified to Congress about how pharmaceutical companies suppress safety data, how we manipulate the system, how we value profit over human lives. My own board forced me out. Good. I stopped fighting the lawsuits. I settled them fairly, generously. I lost most of my fortune. Better, I used what remained to establish a network of free addiction treatment centers. The first one, I named it the Rosa Martinez Recovery Center. It's funded entirely by settlements from my drug, blood money being used to heal the wounds it created. And I hired Lucia to run the foundation. We barely spoke for the first year. She took the job because the work mattered, not because of me. But slowly, painfully, we're rebuilding something. Not what we had. That's gone forever. But something new, something honest. I don't live in mansions anymore. I have a small apartment near the recovery center. No staff, no luxury. I cook my own meals, badly, because Rosa never taught me. I volunteer at the center 3 days a week. I sit with people in early recovery, and I listen to their stories. I hear about the pain they're in, the families they've lost, the trust they've destroyed, and I see myself in every single one of them. Every Sunday, I drive to that cemetery. I bring flowers that I grow myself in small pots on my apartment balcony. I sit on the grass next to Rosa's headstone, and I talk to her. I tell her about the people we've helped that week. I tell her about Lucia's granddaughter, who's thriving now. I tell her I'm trying. I tell her I'm sorry. And sometimes, when the wind blows just right, I swear I can hear her voice. I know, Catherine. I know. Here's what I learned too late. For 40 years, I believed money was power, money was security, money was the answer to every question. I was wrong. Money is a tool, nothing more. It can build or destroy. It can help or harm, but it can't make you whole. Rosa taught me that real wealth is measured in integrity, in relationships, in doing the right thing, even when it costs you everything. I had a palace, but I lived in a prison of my own making. I was surrounded by people, employees, lawyers, executives, but I died of loneliness while I was still breathing. Rosa had almost nothing by the world's standards. She lived in a small apartment. She worked until her body gave out. But she died surrounded by love. She left a legacy that money can't create and death can't erase. And me? I had everything. 3 homes, 2 jets, billions in the bank. But I lost what I couldn't afford to lose. I lost the one person who loved me, not for what I had, but for who I could have been. I lost time I can never get back. I lost the chance to tell Rosa, while it mattered, that she was right about everything. So yes, they say money can't buy happiness, but it's worse than that. Money will make you powerful. It will open doors and create opportunities. It will give you options and security, but it will never make you whole. Success without character is just expensive emptiness. The best investment I never made. Choosing people over profit. Choosing love over wealth. Choosing to be human instead of being rich. I can't change the past. I can't bring Rosa back. I can't undo the harm my drug caused or the years I wasted chasing zeros in a bank account. But I can honor her memory. I can try to be the person she believed I could be. I can use whatever years I have left to make things right. That's my story. The story of a woman who had everything except the love she couldn't buy back. If it moves you, please share it. Someone in your life might need to hear this message. Subscribe for more stories about life's hardest lessons. And remember, the most expensive thing you'll ever lose is something money can't buy back. Thank you for listening.